Welcome to the Fieldnotes Podcast, presented by Seaworthy Functional Medicine. Seaworthy exists to help you overcome your complex health challenges so you can be fully vital. Now, here's your host, Dr. Rob Downey.
What are the impacts of trauma and stored trauma on wellness, and what is happening now in this amazing digital ether in terms of emerging teams, emerging novel teams, their expertise, their insight? Today, we are so fortunate to be joined by Dana and Colleen. And I don't want to steal their thunder. They're also just a unique pairing of traditional Chinese medicine, martial arts, but so much more leadership, insight, performance. So welcome both of you.
It's so great to be here. We've been looking
Wonderful to
forward
be
to
here with you
this.
too, Rob. We're really excited to be with you today.
So, let's see. Is there a digital assistant chirping somewhere?
Might be me, actually. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no problem. No, this is all happening in real time. It's good. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't mine, but I don't have one.
There you go.
So, yeah, today's topic is so interesting and important because I think a lot of people are really intrigued and also a little intimidated by the idea of trauma and stored trauma, and they sense intuitively it's contributory or it's getting in the way, but even trauma itself can be a pejorative term that intimidates them.
Yes.
And so I would say though that probably this issue is the single biggest thing that gets in the way for my patients. So uh, today I think you all are going to kind of take us on a journey through this and through I really would say a unique lens. We probably should start talking about the genesis of your team, right?
Mm.
You two are a unique team. How did you all come at this? Through your qualifications, decide to work with and resonate together, and how does that lead you all to this place where we'll be talking about trauma?
Amazing question.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways by accident. When we met, actually, we were both working in the film industry.
Mhm.
And then fast forward, and I got fascinated by Chinese medicine. I went back to school, and Dana has been coaching in one form or another since you were, what, 15?
In high school, yeah.
Yeah. And so we then started a business together, and I fell into trauma work in my clinic work because people were coming in and things that should have responded, I'm sure you see the same a lot, weren't responding. And then as people started talking, I started realizing, oh, this is, we would just talk. We would talk while we were working, and things would start to shift. And I got into integral medicine quite early on about 2 months after getting my license degree, because it's one way to work with trauma. And then Dana and I have just worked so well together in so many ways that his Black Belt Mind work gave people a framework. So the work that I do helps shift the trauma out, and the work that he does helps give people a framework to sort of decide what road they want to be on and stay there. But it was largely accidental.
Yeah, serendipity.
Very much so. Very much so.
Or Jungian synchronicity. Maybe that's more accurate.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful. That we can have a whole conversation about just on its own.
Right, that's the trouble.
Yes.
That's the next call.
Yes, for sure, man.
Okay, cool. So then, Dana, in high school, I was bullied, and when my dad took me to my first martial arts class in Kalispell, Montana, I went to this Tang Soo Do dojo, and the two instructors, they said, the reason you come in and the reason you'll get your black belt will never be the same thing. They said the winds of circumstance will drive you into our dojo, and you all are the Digital Dojo. I don't want to get this wrong, but the way of place. And so they talked about the dojo being, they talked about martial artists starting out as warriors, and then sort of jitsu, and then they talked about do, the way.
Beautiful.
And
yes.
And so that, and then they talked about this quote, about how we use our martial arts training every day. And so I did end up staying with it for 5 years and endured some hardships and stuff and ended up with my
Awesome.
black belt in Tang Soo Do. And it did change my life.
Fantastic,
And
man. Congratulations. Well
yeah,
done.
thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah. And just like they said, the reason I came in, something about the confidence just of the training itself really changed sort of how I felt, sense of physical confidence in situations. But the leadership skills and the insight and the discipline were really the long-term payoffs and even the sort of, peaceful warrior stuff. So, and then,
That's awesome. Speaking all my language, Rob.
and then Colleen, yeah, my mentor is a Chinese medicine acupuncturist and naturopath trained at Bastyr. So today is just a really fascinating day for me.
I was going to say, of course, that's what's happening.
Well, so let's get to it. And one of the challenges right out of the gate is that trauma is stored in our bodies. We probably need a definition of trauma. And then trauma is not just stored in our bodies this lifetime, but there's multi-generational trauma, the impacts of so yeah, so where do we go with this?
This one,
It's awesome. Great question, Rob. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a fabulous question. And there is a description that I heard ages ago, and I wish I remember where I heard it, which said quite simply that trauma is anything you are not well-resourced enough to process in the moment.
Mm.
And I love that because, first of all, it takes the stigma away. There's no failure. There's no, oh my goodness, I can't handle this. And it also allows for that space where people would come in and I'd say, what's going on? What traumas have you had before this problem started? And they'd say, I can't think of anything, no big car accidents. They were trying to think of something that would look good on a movie screen, really.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's just anything you're not well-resourced enough to process in the moment, then staying up all night with a sick kid and having to get up and go to work the next day can lodge in the body as a trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, when you think of the car accident idea, people come in when there's been a major car accident that thankfully they've walked away from. That actually moves really quickly because we give ourselves the freedom to call that trauma, to shift from it, heal from it, give ourselves some space. I've had people come in and they're going, I don't know, nothing happened, nothing. And then we finally track it back and they go, well, there was a fender bender. It wasn't a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a big deal. So they just went right to work and they never gave themselves space to process it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And does traditional Chinese medicine have a lens on this?
Yeah. And thank you for asking, because I so rarely get to talk about the TCM side of things. and it's so fun from a pattern making point of view. That's what attracted me to Chinese medicine, is much like your work, things make sense through that lens that don't make sense when you don't have that lens. And Chinese medicine talks about ancestral qi or inherited qi. So they say that 50% of your qi is yours. It's heavenly qi, and that's what makes you, and not like any siblings, etc. And then 25% of your qi is inherited from your mother, 25% from your father. So they will say, well, you can inherit a strong stomach so you can digest anything. You can inherit spleen qi deficiency, but you can also inherit trauma. And that's just one of the ideas that is very natural.
Mm-hmm.
And science is starting to catch up with it, which I'm not going to just keep ranting about that, because that rabbit hole is such a great rabbit hole.
Right. Well, as Dana said, we can talk again.
Keep it fruitful. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Epigenetics, genetic expression, methylation. Right. So
all
in brief,
so good.
The artifact on our DNA of the switches, which way they're flipped, if our parents, grandparents, or great grandparents were stressed, distressed, and then sort of carrying those default switches into our existence, which I do think is an immediate place for deepening of compassion for ourselves. It certainly was the first step in me letting myself off the hook about low self-esteem and self-criticism, et cetera, around my hang-ups, just realizing these wheat farmers in Spokane and an Irish railroad detective who disappeared, and a man in my family who was a railroad engineer and an insurance salesman and a store clerk, and World War II, the Depression, the Victory Garden, my dad's Depression era, mentality around abundance or scarcity. I mean, just holy moly. So, and it seems super, super important that we do just recognize we're wearing these heavy jackets of suffering, and it's not some fault in our value that um, I've shared that they end up in our accountability column, even though they're not our fault. Is that
So beautifully
accurate?
stated, Rob. Oh,
Yeah.
Rob, so beautifully stated, man.
Yeah.
So honestly, just on the money, really beautifully stated.
It's beautifully stated.
Yeah.
And I think part of what I find so exciting about epigenetics and inheriting trauma is not only does it give us that freedom to say, okay, I'm wearing this, but it's not mine and I don't have to keep it on. There's no fault for wearing this. This is just what was handed to me. I didn't know any differently. But also, when you look at a lot of these epigenetic studies from people down to earthworms, essentially the reason that trauma gets passed down is because that is the best way for the next generation to survive, as far as our brains decide in that moment. So this isn't an idea of, oh my goodness, what's wrong with me? And it's not an idea of, oh my goodness, what was wrong with them? It's, oh, I wonder what happened to them that this feeling, this behavior, this physical attribute became so necessary feeling for survival.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Yeah, the brilliant reason we do it, but doesn't serve to have that mode become the executive. Right? So how do people know they have it? What do they do about it?
Well,
Straight up.
I mean, I've been jumping in so much.
No, it's awesome. I learn tons of when we do these things because I hear you say things in ways that I'm like, oh wow, I didn't know you said that. Like we don't discuss it like that necessarily, so it's great for me to learn. The kind of the marriage of our work finds its real power in our different perspectives. So coming from a coaching perspective, I'm as Colleen and I joke all the time about, I'm very boots on the ground, right? I want to see how under stress and pressure we perform. Having been a competitive athlete my whole life, having to deal with I was on my way to being a professional football player, had an injury that stopped all of that, a dream I'd been working on since I was 9 years old, which was very traumatic. So my perspective comes from one of a professional mindset and training, but also a personal journey of my own trauma and my own desire to be a better performer as an athlete. But then that extended into wanting to be being and wanting to develop myself. As far as the dynamics of trauma go, from the clinical and professional side, a DSM-based kind of approach, trauma has a pretty narrow scope. And in our languaging, we tend to call that what gets classified as big T trauma. That's like the acute trauma that comes from, childhood cataclysmic events, disasters, things that are identifiable and easily connected to. In other words, you were in a plane crash. Great, trauma, that counts. And here's the things that we do to remedy that. When we put it into a kind of performance lens and like a day-to-day kind of occurrence, trauma becomes what we call little t trauma, and that broadens the definition of how we can address it and look at it, Rob. So the functional definition that I work at in the system I've developed called the Black Belt Mind is that trauma is anything that disconnects you momentarily in the moment from your self-worth. That's a traumatic experience. That's a little t trauma. And that opens up the broadness of permission that we get to look at people with, and that people get to look at themselves with, to say, oh gosh, that whole set of things that I categorized as quote unquote, they shouldn't bother me. Maybe those were traumatic. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Gabor Mate, who actually lives in our city. And we've been followers of him for many years, but he talks about this idea, which I found so profound and applicable to this kind of daily practice of self-care around traumatic events, he says that trauma isn't necessarily the thing that happens around you. It's the way that things feel inside and what happens inside of you in the circumstances of those traumatic external events. Mm-hmm. And that knocked me off my feet when I heard that the first time. It made so much sense, because that's where we, again, get to open up that permission to say, hey, how I feel is important. Because if I'm disconnected from my self-worth in any instance, and particularly chronically, like over a long period of time in our childhoods and our family of origin, on our jobs, in our professional lives, then that disconnection of self-worth opens up space for shame to really, really take root and really, really get itself anchored. So even just the awareness around those possibilities and those dynamics opens up a way for us to work with people on anything that they feel they've been through that's traumatic, from angles that they wouldn't otherwise give themselves permission to contemplate.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. That's so cool. Well, I think the audience will really enjoy momentarily hearing about then the techniques themselves and what it feels like to work with the two of you in your program. But I think two things that come up for people. One is they're intimidated by whether or not they need to re-immerse themselves in trauma to transform trauma. And
Yes.
the other thing that can be a stuck point is they can flood so hard with shame or lack of self-worth that bringing things into the light triggers shutdown. So would the two of you talk about those two things? Does healing require re-immersion? And what's the dimension of engaging trauma that can be done via skillful means so that it doesn't sort of lock the person up?
Yeah, that is such a beautiful question.
Again, beautifully articulated and so on point.
Yeah. One of the things I love, we use NAP as a technique. It's a very simple repeat after me technique. And it's, we developed it by accident, like so many things. and then we fine-tuned it and fine-tuned it more. And one of the things that I love about it is wherever you start, and you can start at as gentle an angle or slope as you need to. And it's sort of like, we often describe it like one of those magician scarves where you pull on the red scarf and then you just keep pulling and pulling. Mm-hmm. And it will pull on all the related instances, because sometimes when people come in, the only thing that they can really safely feel okay talking about is just, this shoulder pain. And it can become quite clear that there's trauma related to it. And yet, if we just start with this shoulder pain and whatever's related to it, it gives the brain and the nervous system a chance to attach all of that together, start to move that. So then you move to the next level without being flooded. That was a vast oversimplification, but I mean, there's a beauty in oversimplification.
Because well, I think people do need some scaffolding to hang this stuff on, right? Or they need something to flash on. So they say, oh, I think I could do that. Or, oh, intuitively, that makes sense to me. Because it's kind of like talking to a friend. Oh, I got cut off in traffic and I was so angry. And then 15 minutes later, well, what was under the anger? Well, my wife had a close call last week. I was really afraid of losing my wife. These are the kinds of things that emerge when we talk to friends and loved ones. It's just, I'm really struck by how when we bring things into the light of consciousness, that in itself is therapeutic.
Yes, absolutely. And giving ourselves permission to treat that as a trauma, as opposed to, I was cut off in traffic, what's wrong with me that it's still bothering me?
Yeah. And I don't want to take a swing at EMDR, just the opposite. But when I did work with a psychologist in Montana and did EMDR for a motor vehicle accident that I survived, I mean, it was reimmersion. That was the state of play in 2008 or something like that. And he was doing a lot of groundbreaking work on EMDR. And so when he took me up to the little alternating vibratory little things that I held in my hands and the alternating light bar. And he would just have me describe how it felt to survive the truck crash and then just what's next and what's next and what's next. And there was this stream of consciousness that jumped all over the place, which reminds me of this description of pulling on the yellow scarf and then the red scarf and then the blue scarf. And uh, so with this technique that you are all describing, um, people follow this intuitive or organic sort of natural stream of things. But as you said, then they don't sort of get stuck or flooded or uh, overwhelmed. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Very well described.
it's beautifully described. When we do advanced nap, we might get into the details of it more. But the thing about basic nap is it's always the same 6 or 7 sentences,
Mm,
which means you don't have to start talking about the details. You just say this fear.
mm,
And part of what it is um again, we borrowed from the Black Belt Mind for nap, which is talking about acknowledging and accepting something
mm-hmm,
without sliding into agreement with what we think it means.
mm-hmm, mm.
So, right? So if we can say this fear, your other than conscious mind, right? The 40 bits of data compared to the 20 million bits of data per second. As soon as you say this fear, this trauma, this car accident, your 20 million bits of data starts cataloging and collating. And then the wording is quite gentle. It just says, there was a good reason for me to have it.
Yeah.
So I don't need to be ashamed of it,
Yeah.
but I also don't need to keep agreeing that it meant what it meant.
Mm. Yeah, just want everybody listening to again get a chance to reflect on this because I think that again maybe sounding a little critical, but I think there's this sort of Puritan strain in sort of Western industrialized consciousness that
Yes.
if we don't suffer, if we're not hard on ourselves, we're not worthy or we're not going to be successful. So people think if they do the things you're describing, they're letting themselves off the hook. It's cheap grace. But the mechanics of it, the physiology of it, the way our consciousness changes, um, really isn't that way. It's both okay and necessary to just install the new hardware and software. We've got a leadership trainer here who comes up and he talks about toxic nostalgia.
Beautiful.
And
That's awesome.
we had a really interesting moment here where the prior, the old way of doing things was when the medical providers would get together with the board, there was a microphone and people could come up and talk about what was bugging them. And then this would get aired out in this setting, this stage. And with the current CEO, I was at one of these gatherings and I saw somebody say, "Hey, are we going to do that thing with the microphone?" And he said, "No, we don't do that anymore." And I learned later that was toxic nostalgia. It was
Yeah.
just dragging, these sort of bloody carcasses out from the past and basically reigniting the hardware and software we don't need.
Yeah.
Re-triggering and re-traumatizing.
Yeah, and so I just want people to know. Actually, Dana, I'd like you to address
Yeah,
this. For
please.
me, because I'm so self-critical, what
Mm,
helped me the most was finding my why. And I had to say, really, I'm just not that good at self-care. I just got to come to terms with this.
yeah.
But what I said is, it really is my jam to show up for other people.
Mm,
And I'm down with showing up for myself if it helps me show up for other people. Like that's the way I can put a
nice.
W in the win column
Yeah,
is,
love
for
that.
somebody else, it'd be a faster bike ride or taking it to the next level with sparring or whatever. But for me, that was my why. And then I did say, okay, I've got to be as compassionate with myself as I am with others. That is what I'm going to have to do to show up. And it really softened this intense self-criticism. So, would you talk more about your side of
Cool.
the equation then? How do people use the part that you do
Yeah.
to to move forward?
Ah, beautiful, Rob. Thank you for that question, and I'm super excited too. I'm kind of over brimming with ideas about what that I want to share there. So I'll keep them as concise as I can. Fundamentally, in the black belt mind, as a set of principles that we use as reference points, right, to help us always know where we are in connection to our self-worth. Why that's so fundamentally important, it feels like to me, in line with your question, is the idea that we need some awareness around what things are and what things aren't. We often, all of us do it, use terms interchangeably, right? The idea that they kind of mean the same thing, when really in practical application, when we're looking at like a real rubber meets the road kind of performance-based approach, it's super important to differentiate like the steering wheel from the gas pedal, because we can't call those things the same thing and be loosey-goosey about how they function. When people think about things like self-esteem and self-worth, they interchange them and conflate them often, but they're two very different energies. I don't get hung up on, my codification or our codification as being the only way to codify these ideas. But what's important is that we are clear about what we're talking about when we talk about specific things. Where that fundamentally gets even more important, on top of that differentiation between self-worth and self-esteem, is in the difference between blame and responsibility, the difference between shame and guilt. Fundamentally, self-worth, as we operate with it, is the value which we perceive in ourselves, as compared to self-esteem, which is our estimation of the value that others perceive us with. Right? If we recognize that those two might possibly be different, and at least operate on them that way, because I'm all about application. And so when I treat those two commodities of energy differently in application, I get profound results. So that's what anchors the confidence I have in the definitions that I use around in sharing, the black belt mind perspective with Knapp, and working in tandem together with Colleen. We both do sessions on our own, but we also do sessions together and lead teams and groups as well. So that's a big important one right there. The difference between self-worth and self-esteem. The cultivation of self-worth in that model is always going to be more important than the pursuit of self-esteem. That's connected to what makes the differentiation between shame and guilt so important. Shame is fundamentally an energy that says, you, Rob, you, Colleen, you, Dana, are bad, broken, faulted, and irredeemable. Guilt is the energy that says, okay, well, what you've done, the actions you've taken or haven't taken, might be bad. That's a small difference, it seems like, semantically, but in application, practically, it's massive. Because if I can address you about something that you're finding traumatic, and you're looking at your actions in that situation, and I can say, well, Rob, where's your sense of guilt in there? Oh, I don't know, Dana. I think it's to do with this. I didn't follow through on this thing, and now I'm really beating myself up for it. We can change your behavior. We can change your actions. But if it gets to the point where it's eroded into a shame dynamic, that's self-worth and shame can't exist in the same space. And you are looking at those actions from a lens that says something's wrong with me, not with what action I took or didn't take, but with me. That's profoundly traumatic, because it erodes our self-worth and leaves us disconnected from any internal sense of our own value.
So powerful. That's just so important.
Wow, beautiful question. Thanks. I
got so excited I was breathing while swallowing.
Talking and spitting and laughing, phones are going off. Virtual assistants were just having so much fun.
Right. Yeah, when I started doing this, I was talking with the person who kind of welcomed me to this space, and she said it was really important to have a podcast and what I wanted to do. And I thought, oh gosh, all right. And she said, authenticity is the coin of the realm. She said, you can't worry about little verbal slip ups, or whether the lighting's right, or little glitches. She said what people are showing up for is the authenticity. That's what they're so thirsty for now. And that
Absolutely.
really
Nice.
helped me. It helped me a lot. I don't think of myself as somebody who had that innate sort of tendency to be in front of the camera, but in a way it made it better around these
Yeah.
very issues, right? Of again, the reason to do this was to get the good word out, be the Johnny or Jenny Appleseed, of functional medicine and these really deep
Absolutely.
layers. Yeah, that's
Love
ended
it.
up being the most important stuff. Well, so let's segue into then. I've started getting to this a little earlier in the podcast because again, I think our audience is really interested to know
For sure.
what would it feel like to work with you? Somebody's out there resonating, right? They're thinking, "Wow, this is really cool. What would it feel like to do this work?" So, do you want to share a couple of stories of what people report when they benefit from this work, the breakthroughs they have, or sort of how this rolls?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, this first, yeah,
Mhm. Go ahead.
I think part of the excitement that I have about this is when people put down when they take that coat off. So this idea, for instance, when you were saying, I'm great at taking care of others, self-care maybe not so hot at. It's not my go-to. That one simple switch of, and I learned that for a reason. I'm not wrong, I'm not broken, I'm not faulty. I learned that for a reason, and I'm allowed to change the reason, but I don't
Hmm.
have to I can even be grateful for it and for what the
Hmm.
intention was.
Hmm.
So the the stories that I get really excited about as they're unfolding in real time are the ones where you see people put down that issue.
Hmm.
And I see it all the time it was so funny when you mentioned Puritans, because so often I'll say, bless the Puritan.
Yeah. Well intended.
Kind of a dated operating system, but
Kind of dated.
well intended.
Talk about some toxic nostalgia. Wow, right?
Yeah, I doubt I have many Puritans in my digital audience.
I suppose by necessity.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's fascinating watching, especially if we're working with a group. Usually everybody is muted except for the one person who is the official repeat after me person, and then everyone
Mhm.
else does it in their own home. And you can see on people's faces, because quite often the person who will volunteer is either going, this is absolutely my thing, I want to make sure that I can clear it, or they'll say, you know what, everybody else seems really upset about this isn't my thing, so I'll be able to get through this like easily. And then you see when they put it down and they didn't realize that they'd been carrying it.
Mm.
Mhm.
So I mean, just to choose women as a group, for instance, so many times we have women coming in, and there's this idea of, here are the places I'm failing, here are the places that I'm not enough, here are the places that I don't deserve. And you don't have to take that back very far when you're looking at epigenetics or even trained behavior to go, well, you you and your ancestors weren't allowed as women to, I don't know, have a bank account or carry money or carry keys because people would steal them, or own property, or vote.
Mhm.
So there might be a little bit of inherited and entrained behavior saying that you aren't worth as much.
Mhm.
And when you see people put that down and realize, oh, I don't have to fight this anymore. I don't have to fight to prove that you should keep me around by doing more. I don't have to fight to prove that you should keep me around because I'm smart, because I'm
Mhm.
helpful. And just realize that they can just be enough.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly what I see here. I find then there's sort of a clean quality of the transformation, transition, transmutation, because there's just enough within. And then there's this sort of clarity and ease with which the person conducts themselves. And it avoids a problem, which is if the transition is to some sort of internal agency, and then the person goes to war What's
Yeah.
the next, retribution, vengeance, empowerment, then so these sort of violent parts of the self that have felt subjugated, then finally get enough juice, you know, to take the field. That next step doesn't, there's a toxicity in that. I think there's something really important that happens when we're able to, maybe it's again compassion, this key thing that you're flagging, which is there's reasons everybody does and did what they did, informed by the parts of our consciousness that have to do with survival and collaboration. It's just this story. It's this long arcing story that comes into the moment we're in.
Yeah.
And we need some meaningful way to hold space for that.
Yeah.
But if it's not compassionate, it just sort of becomes, well, Gabor Mate and Thich Nhat Hanh both, trauma is transformed or transmitted. I worry if we come to terms with trauma, but we don't do it in a peaceful way, a compassionate
Mm.
way, we still are pretty likely to reiterate it.
Yeah. Well, even this idea that you talked about, and I know I'm talking so much
No,
more than
it's
you are
great.
today, just 'cause I'm so, honestly, it's like you're inside my head and you're saying so many things that we talk about all the time. It's
So
amazing.
articulate and precise in questions, Rob, and
You
really
really,
appreciate it. And just, yeah, you're very on point
yeah.
Thank you.
here on this topic. It's great. Thank you.
So, not to overstress the self-care thing, but it's certainly an issue for so many people. Well, if you look at, I believe you mentioned one of your relatives worked on the railroad, an Irish
Mhm.
relative who worked on the railroad.
hmm
Well, right there are all those layers of someone came from another country to this country, which meant right away they weren't well resourced because their family was back there. They probably spent all their money just to get here. They were starting from scratch and working on the railroad, long days. It's all about survival and then taking care of the people who, if they happen to be married, if they happen to have kids, you don't have time to take a bath
hmm
because that's not what that was about at the time.
hmm
So for them to pass that down to you, whether that's through learned behavior or through epigenetics, that's a badge of love
hmm
to say,
Yeah.
I love my family enough to make sure that I work to make sure that they survive.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. Yeah. Have to confess. I mean, probably my own view of this is somewhat subjectively biased because of this tendency to sort of, out of a sense of lack, right? Than to, in the past, respond aggressively to get my needs met. And now I would call it more of a 2.0, a more enlightened way of being for me and for everyone, and really painful lessons. But it part of it was this criticism of these folks. I was really frustrated with what I had inherited
Mm.
and critical of it. And it wasn't until I genuinely acknowledged where it came from and had to say, hey, I was kind of on my high horse here, right? Or even coming from a place of entitlement. I mean, these folks worked really hard and had super tough circumstances, and I don't. And now I'm judging them. And now that's contaminating my ability to move forward. That's got to go.
Yeah.
And so it was letting go of it was sacrificing a sense of entitlement better than the which was getting in the way of um, really a way of being in the world that, I mean, even if I wasn't here tomorrow, I would be so thankful that today and recently and in recent weeks, months, and even over a few years now, I've really gotten to be in the world as a leader, as a physician, as a friend, as a spouse, as a dad, as a community member. I mean, the dimensions of what we can do and how fun and rich our lives can be in response to, and this is what you must have seen historically, Dana. Now you bring this into this collaborative work, right? I mean, people are super effective when they get, like, this is resonating at a really high level when people get into this space. The other side of this is really fun and dynamic.
Fast, Rob. It's beautiful. And fundamentally, what I hear on a consistent basis, whether it's in my own personal work, our work together, with individuals or teams or couples or families is people are astonished by the realization and reconnection to the capacity of their own courage. Like they're just blown away. They're just like, I didn't know I had that in me. I didn't know I had that capacity in me. And that speaks to, in a really positive way, kind of the negative conditions that create that, which is, it's genuinely quite heartbreaking to us to realize in the work that we do just how little people have been genuinely encouraged in their lives. It's just stuns me that people you're like, wow, you've never been genuinely, properly, overtly, and consciously encouraged ever.
Encouraged.
Yeah. And right. And encouraged means to enter your courage, to enter that space, right?
Oh,
that says, wow, I have this capacity that is far more capable of facing anything that I fear than I ever thought possible. And this is where trauma becomes now kind of the center. It usurps the center of a person, where their trauma is bigger than them. And I think if there's anything that we fundamentally do with people is remind them and encourage them that the most important thing that they can do is pay attention to how they feel, and that their feelings are sacred. And anything that's disconnected them from their feelings, they don't have to keep a secret.
Yeah. Whew, so good. Anything you all want to share we didn't get to? Any important stuff?
It's all so important.
Yeah. Anything you've learned you'd love for someone to know based on today's episode, right, that we didn't get to? Something you'd like them to take away from today's conversation?
Yeah. How about you while I percolate? Because there's
a simple little process that I developed for myself and then just started to share with people more and more and more, to kind of help them in the moment to moment, day to day vagaries of life, is to doubt your doubt. When you're doubting yourself in that moment and you're trying to sort of resist that, and it's kind of, you feel that insecurity creeping in and kind of overwhelming you, take a second, stop, take a breath, and then doubt that, right? Very simply. Hey, I've got this presentation at work and I was all ready. And boy, I went and ran it by my boss and now I'm feeling kind of shaky about it. And it's at lunch and I don't know if I don't think I did a good job. I'm going to not pull it up. Pause that for a second. That energy of doubt is always there. Make it work for you. Accept it. And then doubt that. Say to yourself, well, wait a second. Well, what if I'm wrong about not being ready? I am more prepared than I think. And maybe I'm more capable for anything that comes up that I'm not prepared of. Maybe I'm more capable of sort of just handling it in the moment. So I use that every day, all day in my own work, in my own life. And it's a practical thing to do what we call a pattern interrupt, right? And not let that pattern of negativity and self-criticism build a momentum that really separates us from our self-worth and leaves us prone and open to shame. If we're connected to our self-worth, we are almost impenetrable to anybody trying to tell us that we are bad. They can judge our actions, but when we're connected to that true sense of the value that we bring, and we know it and we feel it in an embodied way, that idea of doubting our doubt in any moment that it comes up becomes a very, very powerful, simple, and easy thing to apply out in the real arena of the world.
Brilliant. Yeah, I really resonate with that. And I think that's what I see one-on-one when I do visits with people. I think they are both trusting that internal voice and certainty and doubting their doubt and developing an operating system in real time. This is my whole food plan. I do value sleep.
Absolutely.
Such and such isn't for me. I'm really not somebody that remembers to take supplements in the morning, and that's okay. I don't have to force myself to. I can swim with the current of me rather than against it, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And it sort of immunizes them too against then just the 10,000 things that are out there, some of which really isn't the best information. And so I think it gives them discernment, sense of discernment. This resonates, that doesn't.
Absolutely. Simplifies I will
Mhm.
pursue which calls me and resonates
Mhm.
with me genuinely, and I
Mhm.
will let alone the things that do not. And with
Mm.
all, especially with technology in this day and age, and I'm so grateful for us to have this technology, to have this conversation with
Yeah.
you. But there's a toxic side to all this proliferation of technology and information that flows through it, because
Mhm.
not all of that information is well discerned.
Mhm.
So brilliant, really beautiful.
Mm. Colleen, how
I
about
think
you?
I was going to say, if I could add to that, I think I'm probably remembering a Byron Katie quote terribly incorrectly, so my apologies for that. But along that lines, we should listen to the truth. So we should always listen to ourselves, and the things that we want to reach for more and more are the truth. And then the part that I remember reading, I cannot find it in a book again, so I know I've changed the wording somehow, is that she said, I'll let you know when something's the truth, which is, if it hurts you, it's not the truth.
Mm. Mm.
So
It's
I should
really
be
good.
ashamed. That's not the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, where do people find you?
We are at the digitaldojo.net. And from there, you can find our YouTube channel and all of that. We're always posting a lot of content. We, much like yourself, we just want people to have this information. Like, every time somebody puts something else down, the world gets better for all of us.
Mhm.
So the digitaldojo.net, we've got a whole bunch of free stuff on there. We've got a newsletter so people can get free information. We've got programs people can take on there. We've got the White Belt Mind, so you can get an entryway into that work. And we've got some longer programs, some 6-week try on your own programs. And then in September, we're actually doing a course on happiness.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. What a rich conversation. What a brilliant, interesting team, and just such a classic manifestation of what's happening. I think it's very beautiful what's happening now is this sort of fractal emergence of all of these really cool ideas and teams in these spaces that are sort of accessible to everyone. It's one of my favorite parts of getting to be alive now.
Yeah. Yeah, us too.
One of the blessings of technology, for
Yes.
sure, Rob.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've been so enjoying listening to you and the things
Mhm.
today, but in general from your podcast. And there's 10 more conversations we could have just from things you
Just
glanced
today,
on
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so-
yeah. Right on. Well, let's have them.
Absolutely.
We would love to, Rob. Anytime
Okay.
that you
Anytime.
would love to
Yeah.
engage in that, we would be up for it in a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Thank you for your kind words. Well,
Thank you
have
for
a
your
great
time.
day.
Yeah,
You
thank you
too.
for your great space.
Oh. Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.